huge developments with Russian gas. This saga never ends. I wrote about it a ton in my new book, Geopolitical and Geo-Economic Quantum Calibrations. That's under Austria, Germany chapters, also Russian chapters. There is a lot about it. But these developments, they just keep rolling in. And as I was predicting, US will never leave it alone. Just a few facts. Fact number one, currently, the current budget of the US now implies that they will spend $661 million to stop Nord Stream 2, along with what they call Russian economic expansion, Russian aggression, if you can believe it. There is Russian aggression into the EU, not the other way around, not American and EU aggression and squeezing of Russia from all ends, building bases and all that. It's Russian aggression, economic that is. Russian hidden shadow financing, Russian illegal financings, phrases like this. There is this new report issued in the US, and this report is going to the Congress. I don't know who the author of this report is. I just heard it on the Russian channel, and quotes there are pretty remarkable. Even for the US, even for the crazies that exist in Washington, that's still pretty remarkable. So they say things like, we have to stop Russia. Kremlin usually works in several key directions. We have pinpointed those directions. We have to protect our democracies from being exploited by Russia and being destroyed by Russia. We have to protect our economies from being destroyed by Russia. Phrases like this all over the report, and they keep repeating in circles the same thing. So according to them, there is shadow financing that goes on with Nord Stream 2. Well, nobody says, obviously. First of all, tell me when on earth and how on earth Russia would be able to exploit US economy. That's a US report. They say economies in plural, as if EU and US work together. Okay, so that's just one side of the issue. So they are spending $661 million to stop Nord Stream 2 and Russian influence from spreading. In reality, what does this mean? Well, that's they want to sell their own gas, which is a lot more expensive than Russian gas and much worse quality, period. I'm not even talking about how bad it is for the environment, that LNG gas, which is a fracking gas. This is like shale gas that they pump in chemicals into the earth. That's the process. Very harmful chemicals. The result is mini earthquakes, as experienced in several states of the US where the shale gas is still pumped, including in Pennsylvania, nearby Pennsylvania, very close to New York State. Earthquakes is one thing, but also poisoned water wells. So animals could get sick or die, and so can people. Some people who live in areas like this have to use only bottled water. That water has to be shipped in. No local water can be used. Water can actually catch fire. It's flammable in places where it has been demonstrated in many videos where people demonstrate we live in the area, they say, where there is shale gas exploration or shale gas production going on, and look at the water, and they just ignite the water out of the tap and it catches fire. It's unbelievable. You know, I would not believe if anybody told me, unless it's like I did, I saw it with my own eyes. Now that's just one thing. Also, the land is poisoned, so people cannot do agriculture. Animals cannot graze in those fields where nearby there is shale gas production is happening. Well, that's the effects of the shale gas. And that's what they want to pump more, and they want to take away the market share from Russia and flood Europe with their own gas.
Sure, twice the price.
Twice the price, or, well, I suspect part of this money, $661 million, which is part of the current US budget. It's actually embedded in the budget. It's not like some slush fund or some secret. It is officially in the budget of the United States of America. Congratulations, Americans. Well, that's where your taxes are going, to fight bad Russia. Imagine that, to save your democracy, to save your economy. I have no idea how that is even related to anything to do with the U.S. economy.
Yeah, it kind of goes against the U.S. tenet of capitalism and free markets.
Well, yeah, duh. What capitalism? As Bush once pointed out so correctly, what does Constitution have to do with any of this, right? Invasion of Iraq and all that. And what does economy or democracy or free markets or capitalism, for that matter, have to do with any of this? U.S. is fighting for its survival. This is survival when U.S. Empire is crumbling, U.S. dollar is crumbling, U.S. influence is crumbling. And for Europe, this is the time X. This is the 11th hour. They have to now determine what are they going to do. Is there any sovereignty left in Europe? I talk a lot about sovereignty in my book, Geopolitical and Geo-Economic Quantum Calibrations. I actually calibrate each country's sovereignty, and there are 16, actually 21 altogether, I believe, countries that are calibrated in Europe, including all major countries, and I explain what sovereignty of each country, how it calibrates, why it calibrates this way. Point is, Europe is very much dependent on the US. Very much. It is a superpower as a whole, as EU. That's a superpower. And there's no superpower, like any single country is not a superpower. But Germany is very close. It's a great power. And but it still is not powerful enough on its own. But the EU is a superpower, but very much subordinate to the US. All this is also described in the book, so I'm not going to go into that. Please buy the book, and you can read the whole story there. The whole system is laid out. But the point is that Europeans are finally getting it, that they are too deep in with the US, and their paths, that's the most important thing, are diverging now. They're starting to diverge, which actually did not happen for about 70 years prior, maybe even longer, ever since World War II, ever since the end of World War II, and when U.S. became that go-to country for gold storage, for reserve currency, for that shining beacon of capitalism, the Marshall Plan, etc., Cold War. Ever since, EU's paths did not diverge, and now it does. And the reason for that is the Earth shift. The world is shifting. Russia, the great balancer, is shifting that world away from the West, away from the US. So those who understand it and get on the catch that last train out of the station, they are good. And some countries got it. Some countries' economies are strong. They have very well-educated leaders. And I'm again going to single out what I singled out in the book, actually Germany and Austria in that regard. They're not the only ones. These are the strongest. And so these countries, both of them, are taking the lead. I described this secret meeting or semi-secret meeting which Putin had in Austria, and then Austria became that intermediary that it appears swayed Merkel. Well, I also talk about Merkel, how she changed her attitude completely. And in these last years of her life, she needs to leave a very, very serious legacy. And her serious legacy is Nord Stream 2. So the new Austrian government is actually brilliant. The new chancellor, who is only 33, he's probably about 34 right now. He's the youngest, probably, I'm guessing he's the youngest leader in the world. I did not look at all the leaders, but all the countries that I looked at, which is almost 100, he is by far the youngest leader, which is also the sign of times. 33 years old, very brilliant. He, Sebastian Kurz, and his foreign minister is also brilliant. That lady with whom famously Putin danced at her wedding. So all that, these are symbols. That dance at the wedding, that's a symbol. Russia and Europe dancing, basically. So Austria fancies itself as this bridge between Western Europe and Russia. And they're actually doing a very good job, and they're holding their own. Merkel, surprisingly, even to me, actually is able to withstand all this pressure. Well, just a day ago, I believe that was about March 11th, thereabouts. So we're recording it on the 12th, and so yesterday, or maybe even today, there is such a thing called Europarliament, and you would think that's a big thing, but Europeans are saying that Europarliament holds no real power. They can make suggestions and they vote on things. Like, for example, they condemn Russia all the time. So all the biggest Russophobes who really have no power anywhere else, they sit in that Europarliament and they vote things that are usually Russophobic. And what they voted for yesterday was to stop Nord Stream 2. Europe must stop Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 is already 1/3 built. Investments are astronomical. That's like, I'll estimate at $10 billion at this point. 1/3 built on both sides, from Russian side and German side. Companies that are involved in that are major companies supported by the governments of several countries. And there are several German companies. Well, that's Gazprom is, of course, the main holder and the main financer of everything, but equally so for major German companies that are energy companies, Austrian companies, Shell from the Netherlands, and French company or two even, and a couple of other countries. Every country that is participating in this considers this one of their major strategic projects for the future. Every single country that takes part in the construction. And suddenly Europarliament decides to stop it. Is that even possible? Like in that old joke. I don't know if I ever told this joke before or whether it's known in the West, but I heard it in Russian, so maybe it's very well known in the West. A white guy escapes from the Native American prison. That was like in those days. So he comes back to his brethren and they say, "How did you manage to escape?" He says, scratching his head, "Well, I sat in that prison where they put me in that jail room, and for several days, sat there, and then I finally realized that it's lacking one wall." So I just left. Well, same here. It's approximately the same. I mean, they just caught on that Nord Stream is being built. Let's stop it. In other words, they
surprise.
Yeah, surprise. What did they think? It will never be built, or they were not serious about it.
Does Merkel even have any power to resist the U.S. or the Europarliament?
This is so amazing. She does. And I described it in the book. This is all in the book. But very briefly, I will tell you, she has to do something to leave positive legacy. And this is apparently the deal with her own elites, that she stays until it's finished. And this is how they will not bother her. This is the deal with the people of Germany, because everybody wants Russian gas there, because they're not stupid. Okay, let's do the way they're going. Let's do it the way they're going in Ukraine. They upped their gas payments for citizens by about 11 times since 2014. Okay, in 5 years. Well, just imagine, say we pay for gas, say cooking gas or heating gas right here, say we might pay like $40 for it, or I don't know exactly, but say if we had a gas stove, right?
Yes.
So about $40 monthly payment. Now, imagine that going up by 11 times. Can you still afford it? Well, Germans don't want what they have in Ukraine right now because of their constant these fights with Russia over gas or everything in the world, but because of the sabotage of the Ukrainian side of the Russian gas pipelines and saying that they will not buy gas from Russia, they have to overpay. So now these payments keep accelerating, going up and up and up. Hyperinflation is one word for it, yes. Also, this is in the new post on Futures Chencast talks about how much everything increased. Like home payments, such as taxes and monthly payments, have gone up by 8 times, gas 11 times, and heating about the same as gas. Well, it's crazy. How do those people survive? Hardly, with a lot of difficulties. So
I got an idea. Move
yeah.
to Donetsk and Lugansk.
To Donetsk and Lugansk, yeah. Well, those have gas and heat and everything. All that they actually have, but of course they're being bombed. So it's
It's a trade-off.
it's a difficult choice. It's a very hard
War
choice.
or heat?
Yeah.
it's sad.
Well, how about peace and heat and all the good stuff?
Yeah.
And
Prosperity
love,
for all.
prosperity, and living in peace and cooperation. That's what normal people would choose, but not the crazies that sit in Kiev, obviously, and not the crazies that sit in Washington either, or in the Euro Parliament.
Well, that's their job.
So this new
Crazies in Washington.
this new Euro Parliament we vote to stop Nord Stream 2. How this? Well, this is the way this works. They know that they have no power to actually stop it, but what they're doing, they're trying to put pressure on Merkel, on Kurz, who is the Chancellor of Austria, and on the whole government of Austria, as well as government and politicians and business people and companies that are involved in Nord Stream 2 construction. There are many parties they're targeting there. They're trying to twist everybody's arms, including banks who are financing all this on the European side. Now they're threatening banks that they will go after them. According to that American report that I just quoted for you very briefly in the beginning, what they're saying is that, there is shadow financing going on between several countries, and they even have these like arrows through European territory extending from Moscow.
Supposed charts, yeah.
That's part of their supposed report. Look, it's going to Amsterdam. Look, this arrow is pointing to Berlin and this one to Vienna.
Any proof? Not at all. But
No, not at all. I mean, just like Russian hackers interfering in American elections or French
Hacking
elections
DNC.
or all that.
All that
Then turns out, oh my God, that's like some kind of whistleblower did it, or somebody who is
Guccifer did.
Guccifer did it, whoever that is. Anyway, so that's not all. Now, Sweden also tries to distinguish itself and earn some stripes with the U.S. They released a new movie. I heard some Swedish apologist who was saying, "Oh no, don't worry about that movie. That movie is nothing. It's released by some independent company. It's not one of the majors who released that movie." So the movie is a thriller that talks about Russian invasion. Russians invade Sweden. And the reason they invade Sweden, the plot is to die for. I don't know. Can you imagine? And I'm just wondering how many idiots would watch that kind of movie. But this is the plot. So Russia invades Sweden, and they spray some kind of really bad chemical that infected hundreds of thousands of Swedes who have to be taken care of in some facilities. It messes with their minds. It does something to their brains. God knows what it does. They are very disoriented. And so these analysts are sitting in some secret situation room, and they are brainstorming, why Russia attacked us? Why bad Russia attacked us? Well, it goes beyond saying that Swedes still have this extreme inferiority complex ever since Peter the Great took away their empire in 1700s. They had an empire, believe it or not. And so the Battle of Poltava, all I have to say, Swedes will understand me right away, because there's a major soul losses there, like big button to push. The Battle of Poltava, Swedes, hello?
Trigger.
Trigger, So the Battle of Poltava, and what they tried to do, believe it or not, they tried to take away what? Ukraine. They wanted to have Ukraine as part of their empire, and we are back to Ukraine. Like you can't get away from that Ukraine no matter how you try. So of course Peter did what he did very well. They were completely destroyed in the Battle of Poltava. Poltava is a city in Ukraine. which at the time was, of course, part of the Russian Empire. Was anyway, they lost everything after that. Empire was lost. Empire that included Finland at the time. It included all of the Baltics. Estonia and Lithuania was separate. It was a separate place. It was separate dukedom or something like that. They also had empirical plans which never materialized. At one point, Lithuania was part of the Polish-Lithuanian Empire, wannabe, but Latvia was also part of that. So Sweden loses Latvia, Finland, and Estonia, which become a part of the Russian Empire. But believe it or not, in those days when they were making peace treaties after a country lost to another country, that country that won still paid money. So Russians actually paid good money, if you can believe it. After winning the war, Russians paid good money to buy Estonia from...
Ouch. They're just too kind.
This is
too
ridiculous.
Nice.
To me, that's ridiculous. You win. Anyway, well, that was a long story with Swedes, and I'm not going to go deeper.
But they're
into
really
that.
like kissing cousins almost at the time, right? They were just one faction because it was all Vedic, it was all Rus, right?
Well, not the 17th century. No, obviously not. That was like way before that. At the time, they already forgot totally, and so did Russians in huge part, their true roots, where they came from. And of course, forbidden history is such a difficult subject. There could be details you could argue about. Maybe this detail is not exactly like this. Maybe that timing is not exactly like this. Maybe it was 2 centuries earlier that what one might imagine. So these are all very difficult subjects. But at the time, they were all very westernized already. Maybe 2 centuries before that, it was different. And 10 centuries prior, like 10th century and before that, of course, that was all very different history than what is depicted today. But history was rewritten several times, major rewrites, but it was rewritten continuously all the time. But major rewrites happened several times, and they were either at first by Vatican, then by the Brits and the others, those who accumulated around them, let's just say, in order to shift everything to the West. Like all the history had to be shifted to the West, all the good history, like the timing and everything, that to make West more significant, Russia less significant. But this is such a separate and big subject. For that, please go to my webinars on ladaray.com, and Forbidden History and Forgotten Origins webinars are right there. Whole set, you can purchase it, a set, you save money on it. And that's where you find this out. So anyway, back to the movie though. So they're brainstorming, why? But why are they attacking us? Regardless of what happened in 1700s, okay? Regardless of that big, major soul loss that they can still not recover from. Oh, they're attacking us because... Ready for this? Because Sweden just stopped Nord Stream 2. We blocked Nord Stream 2, they said. That's what they blocked. How can Sweden possibly even block it? We blocked Nord Stream 2, and this is why Russia is actually invading us.
Yeah, nice propaganda.
Can you believe it? That's the premise of the whole film. It's like, duh! Oh, Eureka!
Of course it's up to Sweden to block Nord Stream 2.
How on earth can they block it? Short of sending their own people down. What is it? It's a pipe that runs at the bottom of the ocean, of the sea, right? Baltic Sea.
Right.
So it's a pipe. There's nothing else. And it's at the very bottom. There is no compressor station anywhere but on the Russian side and German side, okay? In between, there's just a pipe at the bottom of the actual bottom of the sea. So short of sending people down there and cutting manually that pipe, in order to pollute the entire sea, got it? Right. Because if you cut the pipe, what do you do? You pollute the sea. And how do you stop that? You can't, because that's it. You're done. You just congratulations. You just destroyed the Baltic Sea. Well, that's the only way to stop the pipe. So they blocked it, and they stopped it. And that's why Russia is attacking them. It's so hilariously stupid. I have no other word for
It can only
this.
come from a government-sponsored project.
No, I mean, it just goes to show the degradation of Western elites, including Western movie makers, including politicians, media, everything, every step of the way. This so reminds me of the collapse of the USSR. Those last 5-10 years before the USSR collapsed, actually starting in early 80s, maybe even... Well, yeah, early 80s, I would say. So about 10 years, 10 last years. No matter what they did, it all was stupid. It all looked bad. They could not...
Even when they were telling the truth, it sounded phony.
Yeah,
Nobody believed them.
that's true. That's true. We did not believe that Soviet newspapers and Soviet news told us the truth about the West until we started moving to the West, like myself, and realized that they were actually telling us the truth. We thought it was all Soviet propaganda until we discovered for ourselves that it actually was the real truth. This happened to Solzhenitsyn. He was criticizing the Soviet government and gulags and all that, and he exaggerated facts significantly, so badly actually that it resembled a lie. He meant well, but he exaggerated a lot.
Course, to prove his point.
He actually was a great awakener, and he was a very important factor in the development of consciousness for Russians. But he exaggerated the number of people who were in gulags by many times, literally many times. It has been proven. Now it has been proven that they actually went back to all the documents and proved that his exaggerations were out of this world. That's why a lot of Russians actually hate him. But he still was a great awakener. He was important in many, many ways. So he immigrated to the US and he lived in Vermont. And once he settled in the US, he started discovering the truth, and he realized that he made a boo-boo. So he started actually saying this because he was a truth teller. He was an honest-to-goodness truth teller. You could not buy the guy, you could not purchase him for any price. So he honestly thought that West was nice, was good, was truthful and honest and democratic, and USSR was bad. He honestly thought that. So he comes here, and within a couple of years, he understands that here they lie more than they ever lied in the USSR. And so he started saying these things openly. He would be invited to an interview to give some commencement speech at Harvard or something, and he would start criticizing their government and their policies and how they conduct themselves, the aggressions of the West and the US. And they started shutting him up. They stopped inviting him anywhere. He became a recluse in Vermont. I know the whole story. I actually talked to a guy who was his neighbor and who oftentimes helped him out there in Vermont. So that was like so funny. I also read this in several sources, including his own confessions. So the moment he could, he actually moved back to Russia. That was in the 90s. Yeltsin personally invited him.
Could his neighbor possibly be Bernie Sanders?
So he comes back to Russia. That was in the 90s. Yeltsin invited him personally because he revered him as this great awakener, truth teller. At the time, a lot of Russians thought that he could do no wrong, that he said all the truth. Only later was discovered that he exaggerated facts so badly that they actually resembled as if he told a lie, which he did not. He did not do it. He just didn't have access to enough documentation, and based on hearsay, that's what he was assuming. But he gathered complaints from people, those people who went through Gulag or whose relatives were in Gulag, and they of course all complained and all exaggerated.
Right, and rightfully so, because he had to reform that system.
In a way, yes. Well, this is a separate topic, and I talked about it a lot in my webinars, which is Multidimensional Geopolitics series. It's in webinar, specifically in webinar 2, Inverted Collapse. Also, I talk about it in the Putin Enigma, which is webinar 6. And so, best if you just purchase those webinars. Maybe I'll put that in my books eventually. The thing is that Soviet Union is not what people believe it to be in the West. The system was a lot better than is described. But there are also things that are a lot worse, okay, than we would have liked. But not as bad as they describe in the West. It's still not as bad, okay? So there is a lot of exaggeration, if not lies, deliberate oftentimes, to malign the Soviet Union, okay? So meanwhile, there are major mistakes that came from idealism that took place in the Soviet Union. Some, of course, came from some worse energies than idealism. Idealism is good, but it really doesn't pay to be idealistic in this very difficult, this sharp world of 3D we live in. And so the West takes advantage of immediately. There's a major predator. They're like this big predator. They pounce on you immediately once they sense any perceived weakness, even if that weakness is actually kindness and sharing. They will pounce on you, you know, and they will destroy you. The moment they see an open heart, they will destroy it, okay? Well, I have lived here for many years. I know exactly how this works. Look at how corporate world in the US works. It's crazy. They will just eat you alive and spit you out, and they won't even take another look at you. Or look how Hollywood works. You know, it's horrible. Anyway, so it was a lot more gentle and a lot more hard to live in the USSR. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to get back to Solzhenitsyn, though, just to wrap this up. And Solzhenitsyn, he came back, he rode through the entire Russia. He took a train from Vladivostok and went through the entire Russia, through Siberia, and then he came to Moscow from another end, from the east. And Yeltsin wanted to give him an award. And Solzhenitsyn refused to accept that award, some major award. He said that he cannot accept this reward when his country is in such condition, such bad condition. Then in the 2000s, when he was still alive, Putin came to power, and Putin wanted to give him an award. And then Solzhenitsyn said that he will gladly accept it from Putin. Not from Yeltsin, but from Putin.
Right, he knows.
Because of the major difference between the two. This is why the guy really, you know, those who say that he was sold out or
he's incorruptible.
No, he's not corruptible. He just made big mistakes. But that said, like, I also did not realize that when I was very young, okay, in my 20s, and I came to the US, then I discovered, I thought that what propaganda in the Soviet Union was not correct about but it was propaganda. It turns out that they were telling the truth. I mean, that was a major discovery.
Hence RT's slogan.
Yeah, truth is the best propaganda, right? Yeah, that's my slogan too. I might steal it from RT. Anyway, why not? So we're back to Nord Stream 2. Well, my prediction is nothing can stop it. Well, this prediction I've already said several times before. And again, go to the book where I'm describing the situation Merkel is in. It's very interesting position that she's in, and her role in all this. Also very interesting the role Austria is playing in all this. I have a separate post that is embedded in the book that talks about all these things and how everything is working. And another thing, this is the time of Russia, of which you can hear if you listen to webinar 4. Again, all the webinars are located on ladaray.com. My books are sold on Amazon, also Barnes & Noble, Nuke, and there will be other distributors, but Amazon has everything, both paperback and ebook. And you can learn through webinars and through EarthShift reports, also on ladaray.com. And of course from the book, which is the latest, you can learn all these things that I'm hinting on or telling you briefly about. They're all described in great detail. So the reason this is the time of Russia, which is what you hear in webinar 4, this is also inverted collapse, which is the topic of webinar 2. Inverted collapse, also described in the book as well. This is the situation like the Soviet Union in the last 10 years, no matter what they do. Even if on some level they're even telling the truth. But actually, see, inverted, it is inverted collapse. I call it that. Why? Because it's coming into the collapse. And I mean that for the West. This US primarily and Western Europe, or all of the EU, let's just say, they're coming into the collapse from opposite directions.
So would you say that it's a Western implosion?
Well, you could call it implosion. That's imploding collapse, also a good one. I also call it a mirror collapse. It's sort of like it's reflecting as a mirror what happened to the Soviet Union, except left is right and right is left. Like you see in the mirror, the opposite direction. I settled finally on inverted collapse, because to me that describes everything that is happening the best way. And so no matter what they do right now, during this inverted collapse, no matter what the US does, no matter what this Council of Europe, of European Parliament, or whatever the hell they're called, no matter what they do and what they say, it will never come out right. You know, whatever Russia does will come out right. You know, this is why Putin is there at the helm, because Putin is the man. You need somebody who is really strong and who can carry the load and carry the message. And it's all in the book, incidentally, a lot. I talk a lot about Putin, tons. I calibrate him. We talk about it as he's one of the, my index of the world's most powerful people. There is his calibrations through and through. He's the highest calibrated leader today in the world. You know, I know if anybody who is listening to this is like anti-Russia, anti-Putin, who do not believe anything, who just like take everything in a negative way, you know, what I just said, they might perceive as a problem. You know, I have people who dislike my podcasts or something on YouTube, any videos on YouTube, because they're just Russophobes. If you're in that category, because they hate Russia for whatever reason, or because they're jealous of Russia, or because they're angry that, how dare I say, that Russia is doing well. Russia has gone through its huge problems, huge karmic problems. Russia had to resolve it. Russia worked extremely hard, paid huge price for solving those problems. They earned the right to now to do better. Putin also earned this right. What he went through, what a lot of us went through. We earned this right 100%. The West has usurped extra power. And it's not just the West nowadays. It's all those little yappy lapdogs around the West, like Poland and Romania and whatnot. Ukraine nowadays. And again, if there are Romanian or Polish trolls that don't like what I'm saying right now, I am half Ukrainian, half Russian, and I never shy away from telling the truth about Ukraine. You might as well try to learn the truth about your countries. Stop disliking something or lashing out at me. I'm just a messenger. Start lashing out at your own governments and start questioning your own governments. That's who make your countries that terrible, or the Baltics for that matter. Or if you are in the US and you do not accept my message, okay, if you really don't want to learn anything, move on. Just move on. Okay, goodbye. You know, you don't belong here. Then I have no idea what you're doing watching my videos.
They can't handle the truth.
Yeah, there are people who can. If you cannot handle the truth, have a great life. Goodbye. But if you want to learn the truth, then please, you're very welcome. Come to my videos. That's EarthShiftPodcast nowadays with Lada channel on YouTube. Come to Future Strandcast, which is my free blog, and I try to post whatever I can there. Read my books. The new book tells you so much, and there will be future books as well. You will learn a lot. You will grow a lot. And of course, there's Patreon, where I share my most sacred stuff, my secret, most significant, most important, most in depth. You join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/LadaRay. You become a member at whatever level you like. You support my books, you support my research, my work, my future revelations, also my free work that I share with people. And you also get to hear content that nobody will hear ever, nobody will see ever, because I write a lot of very in-depth posts there that nobody else will know about. I make predictions there. I reveal multidimensional stuff. There's so much good stuff. And some of the stuff you will learn and hear and read on Patreon that will only be shared in future books, like a year from now, 2 years, and maybe even longer from now. So you gain a lot by joining Patreon. Well, that's basically the end of this conversation. Bottom line, Nord Stream 2 is, that's my prediction, is a go. They will continue trying to sabotage it at all costs, and there will be brutal fights in the EU. US will be fighting tooth and nail. I've been predicting this since 2014, and this continues being the case. But they still had some power in 2014. Right now, their power is seriously waning, and inverted collapse is developing faster and faster. They actually made a big mistake with Ukraine. They thought that they would really weaken Russia. Instead, Russia is strengthening, which is what I'm describing in one of my latest Patreon articles, which is addendum to the book and in the book itself. And again, look at the book. There is so much in it. It's Geopolitical and Geo-Economic Quantum Calibrations by Lada. On Amazon, just type that in or type my name, and you will see that book come up. And it's both paperback and ebook. And paperback is still on sale, but it will go to its original retail price pretty soon. So
wonderful. Thank you so much for this update, Lada.
No problem. Bye.